everyone. Taylor from Doomed to Fail. Today we're re-releasing episode 2, part 2, where I talk about Emperor Nero and his wife Poppaea. I want to apologize again for all the times that I said South Korea when I meant North Korea in this episode. I 100% blame Fars. He knows better. He should have stopped me. Also for the ums, I apologize for the ums. It was our second episode. I'm trying to get better every day. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy.
In the matter of people in the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Okay, well, that was terrible. Thank you, Fars. Happy to hear that terrible story. So I have like 7 pages of notes I've been working on. But today we're going to talk about Emperor Nero and Poppaea Sabina, who was his second wife. And so a lot of these word names are like a smidge Italian sounding, so I'm going to do a terrible job saying them. It's also a very confusing timeline. So just know that too. People spend their whole life studying these stories and like writing books about them, and I'm trying my best. So Nero was the 5th emperor of Rome from 54 to 68 AD. So we're going way back in the past, about 2,000 years ago. We're a little bit past when Jesus lived and died, but at least we're going up because I'm really bad at BC timelines. I like can't figure it out. Like I'm bad at time zones and I'm bad at BC timelines. So I'm glad we're in on the up and up. So 54 to 68, Nero was the emperor of Rome. So Poppaea is his second wife, and
Are you saying Pompeia?
Poppaea, Poppaea.
Okay, I was thinking about the Mount Vesuvius thing. It's different than that. Okay.
Yes, but that comes back. We'll get back to that. So it's not a coincidence that her name sounds like that.
Got it.
Yeah. So she's a second wife. Having a first wife is not a red flag. You're talking about, that's fine. You can have a first wife. You can even have a second wife. It could be like have a divorce and it didn't work out and whatever. That's no big deal. But so the idea of having a second wife, being the second wife, is not the red flag. What happened to the first wife is the red flag. But we'll get to that in a minute. It was bad. So to study and get prepared for this, I watched some YouTube videos, some Wikipedia, some other articles, and also per usual, cannot recommend enough Dan Carlin. He has a great million-part series called Death Throes of the Republic that talks about when Rome was a republic up to Julius Caesar, and that's when they started to have emperors. So we're in the very beginning of the empire. The republic is over. So they get the background on the republic. Listen to that. It takes like 3 days, but it's totally worth it. So it's a direct, next step in that story. So I want to talk about the background, the cast of characters, and then what led to their marriage and what happened after. I also got to do the most exciting thing ever in my life. Now I can't find it. Oh, I got to reference my own library files. I was like, I think I've seen this before. So I got to pull a book out of my own library that gave me information that I needed, which is like my dream. So
Let's plug the book. What's the book called?
This is A Fatal Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. It is a book about murder and death and humanity in ancient Rome. It is by Dr. Emma Southen. It is very funny. It's like funny. She's very sarcastic. I feel like she's probably younger than me. Like I could talk to her. She's awesome. So she wrote this amazing book, and it talks about like just how much violence there was in this time and the way that people saw other human beings. So if you were an enslaved person in this time, you were not considered a human, like at all. And a lot of people who were enslaved didn't look physically different than the people who weren't, because it was like spoils of war from like another part of Italy. It wasn't like African people that you could like see and really like make that a thing. It was like just other people, but they weren't seen as actual human beings. So they died a lot. People died in like the arena, and they died, working a lot and like to death, like working to death, and like for spilling wine, you get eaten by a lion. And people didn't think that that was wrong. It was just sort of like par for the course. So it's kind of like hard to understand because it was a long time ago, and we also have like very little actual details and information about this. Like we have stories that we heard like passed on and like bits of pottery and things like that, but you don't know exactly what happened. But it seems like, people like wives and children, like they weren't, treated like people. So if your wife dies, that's sort of a you problem. There's no like police force. You're not going to go to jail. It's like your family decide what to do. And if your family decides that means that you die too, problem solved. So it's a lot of like just and there's a lot of murder. So it's violent, it's smelly, it's sticky, there's blood everywhere. Like that's the world that we're in right now in ancient
And,
Rome.
and what did we learn last week? If you kill your spouse, cremate the body before the autopsy.
100%. Yes. Don't like kill them with a knife that has your name engraved in it. Absolutely not. Um, so, we see a lot of Christians being burned for fun. We see a lot of people like hanging from trees and on spikes, and a lot of death in here. But you just kind of feel you get the impression that people felt a little bit differently. And that's a lot of that is in this book. A fatal thing happened on the way to the forum that I totally recommend. But just kind of have that in your head that you have these like people that you don't. And murder isn't like you're not going to go to jail. There isn't a jail, and people get
Nobody
murdered all the
cares.
time. Yeah, nobody cares. Um, so that's where we are right now. We're in ancient Rome. And some of our, important characters, of course, there's Nero, the emperor. And to continue with our noodle analogy, Nero is like the spoon that you use to get noodles out of the pot. Like he's not
Okay,
even a noodle. He's like that like spoon with like the little fangs on it that you use to pull out spaghetti.
can we? Okay, so you know what's funny is my head went directly to the spoon you get when you get ramen, the little boat tray thing. But he's
No,
not
that
that.
no, that one's lovely and gentle. I'm talking about the one like the big one with like the spikes on it that you use to
Okay,
like hand out the spaghetti. So that's what
picture
Nero is in this
picture
story.
picture painted.
Yes, great. No, I feel like if we do find someone gentle and nice, they can be like a ramen spoon, like the spoon you get when you get like miso soup.
Yeah.
That seems like a kind spoon. Um, but so Nero, our emperor, his mother, Agrippina, Claudius is his uncle and his stepdad and an emperor. So there's a lot of family tree stuff, very Game of Thrones that I do not understand. But I will try to clarify it as best as I can. There's Octavia, who's Nero's first wife. Poppaea is his second wife. And then some supporting characters. There's a witch. There's actually a fourth wife. And then there's a man called Sporus, who we'll get to.
Okay, so
Um,
Nero was married 4 times.
yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. Um, kind of five, the last two kind of go on top of each other. We'll get to that. So most of history talks about Nero as being just the worst emperor ever, just being violent and selfish. And some of the things he did are terrible, like all of the killing, lots of sexual assaults. He's actually a model for the Antichrist in the Bible. So some sects believe that when the Antichrist comes back, he'll look like Nero. Um, which means that he will be chubby and have a neck beard because that's what Nero looked like. Even the statues of Nero, he's chubby with a neck beard. So that's like what he looked like and what he wanted to look like. So picture that. Um, and some things he did that are like bad, but like I feel like they're par for the course for an emperor in this time or like a supreme leader in any time. So it reminds me of things like, he's not paying attention to things happening in the far reaches of the empire. Right now, the Roman Empire goes all the way up to Britain. So, I mean, how is he even gonna know what's happening over there? It takes like months to get over the Alps to come back and tell him, and he just doesn't care about the empire itself. He cares about himself, and some of the things that he does involve him like being the best sportsman and being the best actor and being the best
Oh
blah blah blah.
no, he's the Kim Jong Un of. So that
It's
that
exactly.
personality is that what you thought of? That personality
Mhm.
trait seems to exist. You like it's ubiquitous with like power. It sounds like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I wrote it's like Kim Jong Un being the best basketball player in all of South Korea. And like do you remember when Putin like went scuba diving in 10 feet into the ocean and found those like ancient vases?
Yes, yes, yes. That
It's like
was
that.
so good.
So that stuff is like, it's bad, but I don't feel like that like makes him the worst. But what I do think it is a red flag for a lot of shit happening underneath the surface. So
That's fair.
obviously, like we know there's like so many terrible things happening in Russia and South Korea, and they have these leaders who are like, "Hey, but I'm the best," and you're like, "People are starving," so you're not the best.
Kim Jong Un
So
is also chubby, but I don't think he has a neck beard.
No, I don't know if he can grow a beard.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah,
probably can't even grow a beard. Yeah,
yeah.
jeez.
But it's a very similar idea,
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
being like, "Oh my gosh," and then like when you watch like I don't know, I watched a documentary of uh eye doctors going to South Korea and curing people's glaucoma, and after they would like remove the bandages and they could see, they would go up to like a picture of the Supreme Leader and be like, "Thank you, Supreme Leader. I'm so grateful for you that you did this for me, that you got me this doctor, and blah blah blah." But you're like, this could have happened like 15 years ago if the Supreme Leader allowed doctors in, like he what?
The
So
amount of brainwashing is just
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. So there's a lot of that I think in this episode for both things. But so the stuff that he's done that is bad, some of it's legitimately bad, some of it's red flags for other things that are happening. Um, Nero himself was born in the year 37. His name was ready. Lucius Domitius Inobarus. Nope, I can't do it. That sounds terrible. But he was generally a member of the upper class. That was his name. His dad was kind of terrible. He died when he was 2. His mother was Agrippina the Younger, and she was very, very power hungry. Like she was like distantly related to the Julio Claudians, like Julius Caesar and Claudius the first emperor. Um, and the current emperor at the time when Nero was born, um, Caligula was afraid of Agrippina. He was afraid of her ambitions, so he had her banished. And Nero got sent to live with an aunt, and he got tutored instead of by like a normal tutor. He got tutored by an actor. So he has this like actor who like was his tutor, and also actors are like the lowest of the low. It's like sheep slave actor in like
Oh wow.
the
Okay.
thing, like it's real bad. So he's like, brought up by this actor for a little bit. And Caligula is obviously gets assassinated because there's a lot of assassination in this story and a lot of
I would
murder.
assume. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next in line is a man named Claudio. Claudio, no, Claudius. Oh my God, Claudius in the Claudio line. So he's actually Agrippina's uncle. So he's Nero's great uncle. And Agrippina and Claudius get married. So she's married her
Hold on.
uncle. I know this is a lot. I
So
wrote this is
confusing.
confusing.
It's
I'm
just
confused. There's the new emperor. Caligula is murdered. The new emperor is Claudius. Claudius is Agrippina's uncle. So he's Nero's great uncle. They're in this like Julio Claudian line of the original emperors of Rome, going back, a couple like 100 years or so. Um, and that means that he adopts Nero. So the new emperor is now Nero's stepdad and also his great uncle.
it's gotta be so confusing, especially when you're being taught
It's
by an actor like that. There's that. If we can't string the logic together, some actor is probably not going to be able to string the logic of that family lineage together either, right?
totally. It's like a VC Andrews book. I just like don't know what's going on. But so now um the Claudius is the emperor, Agrippina is the empress, and also Claudius has a young son named Britannicus, who's a little bit younger than Nero. Okay, so now they're in this like incestuous family, whatever. And Claudius was right to be worried, about Agrippina. She was definitely wants to be in power. That's her whole thing. She wants to be power, but she can't be because she's a woman, so she needs to be, just like related to power. So she's married to the emperor, but she really wants her son to be emperor. So she cooks up a plan to kill Claudius. So Agrippina, Nero's mom, um, gets this woman who is super fun. Her name is Lucasta. I'm gonna try my best, but she is a poisoner. So she is the kind of person where you would go to her and ask for poison to kill someone. So you're like, my husband's abusive. I don't like the emperor. Like, I want to kill my rival. Like, she would give you the poisons. So she could do like all sorts of different kinds of poisonous things. She could make it like a slow burn or immediate death or like whatever. She was like this like witch who made poisons. I say witch because like she feels witchy and fun.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. I love the witchy vibe.
Yeah,
But in this case, given where the request is coming from, she knows that she's doing something to kill the emperor.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
cares. Again, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. She knows. She knows. Um, so she gets Agrippina asks for like a slow poison that will kill him slowly over a meal. So not like drink it and you die immediately, but like start to get sick and then die at the end of the meal. So you could like attribute it to bad food or like something else.
I'm
But
I'm like playing out the whole story about like Rasputin's assassination in my mind right now, where he's just sitting
yes,
there like, please, when are you gonna kneel over? When are you gonna fall face first into your vat of wine is it's incredible.
Exactly. And then what happens is Claudius doesn't die from this because he throws up. Because he throws up because he drank a bunch of wine. So if you drink like 7 casks of wine and eat a bunch of food, like you're probably going to throw up. So he does, and so he doesn't. The poison doesn't work. So Agrippine has to go back and get something that would kill him a little bit quicker, which is a smidge more suspicious, but it has to be done. So they do it, and Claudius is he dies, and Nero becomes emperor.
Do we know
So
what age Nero is at this point?
he's 16 when he becomes emperor.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So he keeps Locusta, the witch, she gets to live in the palace with him and just like be on hand to make poison. So I picture her like in Robin Hood Men in Tights, like in the basement with like, do you know what I'm talking about? Latrine.
No.
And Robin Hood Men in Tights, the witch's name is Latrine and she lives in the basement and like gives him like does like the bones and stuff. It's really funny.
It would be a fun
So
thing to have in a basement. It would just you have an in-house witch to go to
yeah.
whenever you
Oh
need
my
some
God.
potions. I love that.
I love it. I love it. She probably also did like skincare stuff, I imagine, like other fun things. Um, so she lives in the palace with Nero. He's 16 years old. So I'm glad you asked that because I did watch a couple videos where they like talk about him being 16 and how that is a very young age to become emperor and like imagine yourself at 16 and that kind of thing. One of the videos even like it was like a I can't remember, I'll put it in the notes, but a British documentarian talking about it and they had like clips of like young British dudes at the pub. And I'm like, yes and no. Like, yes, you're young when you're 16, but also I don't know what a ancient Roman 16 is,
Yeah.
Like being a teenager is new. Like, do you remember learning that in school? Like you weren't
Yeah.
teenager became a word like after World War II. Like other 16-year-olds were probably married and had jobs. Is that
I,
like
yeah, like once you consider if you were like a single woman or girl at like 16, weren't you like considered an old man? I mean, the
oh
lifespan
yeah.
was so short back then, I would assume.
Yeah, totally. So like I don't know. I don't know if I can compare him to a 16-year-old now and say he was super
Right.
immature. Like he was definitely like not the best statesman of all time, but I don't know if his age is like as big of a thing as we can say it is. But he's young. Either way, like he wasn't going to do all of the work. His mom was. So even like a really kind of crazy thing is that they're both on the coin from this time, him and his mother.
Mm.
So which is like super unprecedented. They're staring at each other, like they're both the same size. So like they're both on the coins. Like they know that like she is a big part of this, of ruling Rome as well. So eventually she's like trying to get more and more power. She's thinking of maybe siding with Britannicus, who's her stepson. Remember Claudius's son. So Nero has him killed. So he's out of the picture. He gets poisoned. And then he's like, his mom continues to try to, get power from him. So he has her killed. Um,
Wait,
Eventually,
he has his mom killed?
oh yeah. So that's a red flag, if you're killing a lot of your family members for power, I imagine. So
No,
he
the red
doesn't want,
flag is like the witch in the basement who's like constantly creating poisons to kill your relatives. I mean, why is nobody
find
calling
her
this
alive.
up?
No, that's definitely bad. But he could kill you at any moment in any number of ways. The first way he tries to kill his mom is he stages like a boat crash. So he like puts her on a boat, gets another boat to hit it, and expects her to drown, but she doesn't.
That's so
And then
needlessly elaborate.
I know, because he wanted to make it look like an accident, but he was like, forget it. He ended up ordering assassins to kill her and make it look like a suicide. But
Okay.
so she's
Gave the basement witch night off, basically.
yes, exactly. So his mom is dead. He's now like the sole leader of Rome. And now let's talk about his wives. I think this timing overlaps a little bit. Like he's married when his stuff is happening with his mom, but we'll just talk about his wives in general. So his first wife, Octavia, was his stepsister. It's very confusing. So, I mean, they're not related. They're step siblings. But so she fits into this
I mean,
family
it kind
tree
of
as well.
makes sense because it's not like you can like if you're that high up in royalty, like your network is probably very insular.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah,
people that you interact with on a daily basis, probably like it's just like everybody that lives in this castle because you're not going to go down to the market and buy fish, right? So
yeah.
I guess it tracks. It tracks.
I mean, Queen Elizabeth married her cousin, so
Is that true?
that's the thing.
Wait,
Yeah.
Charles is her cousin.
No, Charles is her son, but Philip was her cousin.
Philip, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, I
like
didn't
like
know
maybe
that.
second cousin, but like not great, number of cousin. Don't get mad at me, England, but they're related. Um, so he's married to Octavia. She's a stepsister. She's also quite a good wife. She really wants to be subservient to him. She wants to help Rome. She like loves Rome. She loves like, being a wife, all the things. And he hated that. So he tried to kill her several times by strangling her, because the people loved her and like that was annoying. And like he
Yeah.
just like didn't, she wasn't super exciting. They didn't have any children. So he kind of used that as a weapon over her because it had been a couple of years and they hadn't had kids. So during this time, he obviously like has girlfriends and things like that. And he's trying to, you know, he's doing other things. So he meets Poppaea during this while he's still married to Octavia. So Poppaea is from Pompeii. So
There
that's
we
where I
go.
like brought that up. They actually think that they have her house in Pompeii excavated. So you can like go into where she might have lived. She wasn't like there during I don't know when Mount Vesuvius erupted, but she wasn't there during that time, but they think that they have her house. I've been there. It's awesome. It's really fun to like walk around Pompeii. I don't recommend climbing Mount Vesuvius because it costs like 10 euro and it takes forever. And you get up there and it's just sand. It's not very exciting. Um, but so she's from Pompeii. She's been married two times before, actually. There's actually a fair amount of divorce in ancient Rome, and it seems to be fine. There's no one has like any qualms about it. Her first husband was actually executed by Agrippina, Nero's mom, because she didn't trust him. So he was like in like the guards and she didn't trust him. So she had him killed. Now she marries her second husband, and they got divorced. So whatever. So she has one son from her first marriage, and she meets Nero, and it seems like this is the thing. Like they really like each other. They really want the same things. Like she's from like a noble family. She wants to get ahead. So does he. It seems like this is their love. They really, really like each other. So he gets her pregnant, and he banishes Octavia, his first wife, which I was reading it and I was like, well, that's great. He banishes her. I'm like, banish me to an island with
I
some
feel like
wine.
it's not going to end that way, though. I feel like it's bad,
No,
isn't it?
it does, and he kills her almost immediately.
Got
So
it.
he banishes her, and people are sad because they liked her and they miss her. So he's like, "Oh my God, I don't want to bring her back here." So he has her killed as well.
Ugh, yeah.
Um, so we thought for maybe he didn't, but like, no, he did. So
But also, Taylor,
he
if you get banished, you're probably not getting banished to like Hawaii, right? Like you're probably getting banished to like somewhere awful. I would
I don't know.
assume.
I kind of think I don't remember where she's banished to, but I kind of think it's okay. I think you get banished to like the seaside.
Actually, Italy, yeah, there's not really that many bad
You
spots
know,
in Italy.
yeah, I think it's like Napoleon, like on Elba. I'm like, what are you crying about, dude? But like you still like want a lot of power. So people loved her, wanted her back. So he had her killed. Um, so he marries his pregnant Poppaea in 62 AD. And they genuinely liked each other, chose to get married. She helped him with his reign. The Roman people didn't love her because they really liked Octavia. And they were obviously like,
Yeah.
this is suspicious and weird and we don't love her. She also had a child from her first marriage that Nero drowned on a fishing trip. So that's bad.
So bad.
I keep seeing things where like new historians are like, maybe he wasn't that bad, but I'm like, maybe he was. I don't like that stuff's real bad.
I mean,
Kill one child
it's
and you're bad. Should be the rule.
kill your mother, some child. I mean, yeah, talk about a family annihilator. Okay.
For real. So he kills that kid because he wants like the only kids of Poppaea to be his. But unfortunately, the first baby that they have, she only lives to be 4 months old, which is kind of like par for the course, I feel like, for most of
Yeah.
all time. So, but now, Nero's only 26. He's not like it's been 10 years. He's like killed his mother, he's has two wives, like, a lot of stuff has happened, but he's still only 26. And then something crazy happens. Um, Rome burns down in 64.
I've heard
And
this. Nero and the
yes,
fiddle, right?
exactly. Except fiddles weren't invented until a lot later, and he wasn't there. So womp
I
womp,
was,
that's not true.
I was lied to.
So he was actually at his beach house, like 30 or so miles away on the coast. And he did come to Rome immediately once he heard that it had happened. And Rome burned for almost 9 days. So what we see now of Rome and like Pompeii and ruins now, you see stone and you see like that whatever like the stuff that could survive 2000 years and survive fires and earthquakes and all of that thing, but there's also like tons of wooden houses There's wooden houses, there's fabric, there's people, there's livestock, there's hay, there's so much stuff that can burn. So a lot of Rome kind of burns to the ground. Um, the same thing happened, in the Great Fire of Chicago, where a lot of Chicago was burned down. The same thing happened to Moscow. I think in like the 1800s, Moscow burned down because it was all wood. So a lot of it, what we see is just kind of what is left. So he did return to Rome. And one thing he did that was good is he did open his palace to let people in, which I wanted to note that Joel Osteen did not do. Remember that guy?
Yeah,
He's like
yeah.
had a mega church somewhere, and then like there was a disaster in Houston, and he didn't let anybody in the church to like
He
stay
was
when they
trying to
were.
he was trying to preserve the carpet, which
Yes,
I mean,
right, and all the money he
not
had
very
like in the
holy.
walls. Yeah, the worst.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's worse than Emperor Nero if that in that case, which is I think is pretty bad. Um, so one thing that people are suspicious about in history is that um, after the Great Fire, Nero built a huge castle on some of the empty land. So some people think he might have done it to like, clear the space for his castle.
I
Um,
mean, it's fitting with everything else you've said. I mean, I like there was like a little
yes,
caveat there saying,
yes,
look at him. He opened his castle up to let the people come in. He murdered like half his family and like killed his wife, the
yeah.
stepkid, the
No, you're
mom.
right.
Like this sounds more in line with his character than he's just a normal emperor.
Totally, totally. And he also like stuff like that, like I'm saying like it's 2000 years ago. We don't know what life was like then, all those things, but also 6,000 people died making the stadiums in Qatar for the World Cup this year.
I did
Like
not know that. That's insane.
they brought people in from other countries, took away their paperwork and worked them to death. And
Wow.
that happened this year. So like there's still so many bad things that happen in the world that are very similar. It has to do with power. Um, so after the burning of Rome, while this palace is being made, Nero does the most hilarious thing, and he goes to Greece because Greece is part of the Roman Empire, and he goes on like a artistic tour because he wants to be like a singer and an actor, and he like wants to play all the instruments and wants to like perform. He brought a lot of like performance to like the gladiators and the arena. Like he had like if you're gonna have like a slave killed, like have them dressed like Hercules, so you can like make it more of like a story. So he really liked the like showmanship part of it. So he goes to Greece where they're having this like annual festival where every town and every place has like a competition, like who's the best singer in town, who's the best blah 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 in town. There's about 1,800 competitions throughout Greece, and guess how many Nero wins?
Wins?
Yeah.
Well, given his pedigree and that he was raised by an actor to teacher, he probably did pretty good. I'm going to say 1800. I'm going to say 800.
He won 1,800.
No.
He won all of because
So
if
it
he
was
didn't win,
rigged.
he's gonna get killed. Of course, it was
So it was
rigged.
obvious. Of course it was rigged. I'm sitting here, oh, my pure heart.
I know. Good for you. Good for you. No, like he won every single one of them. So he goes to Greece, he comes back, and people are just mad. They're like, "Did you kill all these women in your life? Did you burn down Rome? Where have you been?" All that. And during this time, him and Poppaea get in a fight. And it could have been normal. I'm sure that he was like not a gentle man. But she was pregnant, and the story is that he kicked her to death while she was pregnant, which is terrible. Um, the the newer there's like other things people are like maybe she just died in childbirth, and the people who wrote this story hated Nero. But either way, it's not like he was kind to her at this point in her life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he
Pretty
wasn't
toast.
great before this. So he was definitely abusive, and she died. He probably kicked her to death, which is absolutely terrible. So now things are crazy. Like now things are crazy. He's actually devastated that she's dead. And he like instead of having her cremated per usual, he has her like mummified, and he has like all of these. He spends all this money on like a huge memorial to her and all these things. Like he's very, very sad that she's gone, even though he probably had a lot to do with it. Um, and the empire is crumbling. People are really upset with him. He hasn't been paying attention. He's been a jerk. He spent all the money on palaces and these like competitions that he was in, and he's never around. So people are like, this guy has got to go. So before that happens, I'm going to tell you the worst thing that he did. It's subjective because he's done a lot of bad things, but like, clear your mind. You never could have imagined this. So
I'm 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 nervous.
so he's sad that his wife is dead, and he marries a woman named Stelitia Messalina in 66. And she actually turns out fine. She leaves this end of the story, marries someone else, and has a life. But she's not what he wants. He wants his wife back. So what does he do? He gets a young man who has an uncanny resemblance to his wife, has him castrated, and marries him.
Oh my God, that
I
is
feel like
pretty bad.
that is buried in a lot of the stories, and I'm like, that feels like the worst thing. Like I know people died, but like could you imagine if like you had a friend whose wife died and then later they were like, "Oh, here is this like person that kind of looks like her." I imagine him like wearing a veil and being like, "I'm Poppaea," like
They just
it,
slap a dress on me and shave my beard, and they're like, "This is my new buxom wife." It's just incredible.
it's terrible. So he married him, um, and
Maybe he wanted to live that. Maybe he was like some poor beggar kid, and he was like, "Well, I get to sleep in the castle, and I get to eat and have clean water and wine, and I gotta just, I don't know."
well, there is no clean water.
Oh well.
But maybe, but I feel like I feel like
Your
it's
si-
also
your situation has to be like pretty dire to where this is an upgrade.
yes, yes,
So
yes,
it
yes, yes.
probably wasn't an upgrade.
No, probably not. Because I'm sure that he was also very abusive towards him, like he was. And then he would like, this is all, I'm all making this up, but I imagine he would like beat him up and then cry and be like, I miss you. Like, it's
Oh
not
my
great,
God.
you
Yeah.
know? So, so he's married to this dude, and now people start like trying to kill him all over. People start, having all these revolts all over the empire. So he starts kind of running around trying to hide. He's like in his palace and he's like trying to find his guards, and they're not there. Like people are like, abandoning him, and he knows that he's kind of in danger now. So he decides that the best thing to do is to kill himself. So Nero plans to kill himself, but he can't do it. He doesn't have the guts. So he tried to be like, he's 30 years old, and he tried to say, "My last words are, what an artist dies with me," is what he wanted his last words to be. But he couldn't do it. So he had his private secretary, Hippolytus, kill him instead. And he ended up actually getting executed for murdering the emperor, which is super unfair because the emperor asked him to do it. Um,
Yeah.
and then the others tried to save him. And Nero, his words were actually, too late. This is fidelity. So like, stop trying to save me. I want to die.
Do we
So
know how he was killed?
I think he was stabbed. It was like a lot of like very
Ugh.
bloody, I think in the neck. So he only lived to be 30. And that was actually the end of the Julio-Claudian line that his mom was from. And then the next year in 69, there were four emperors. So it was called the Year of Four Emperors. So things were kind of crazy. They didn't really get their shit together until a little bit later. And yeah, I mean, after Nero died, Rome went through some time trying to figure out like what it was and what they wanted to do, but he definitely left like this a lot of devastation and a lot of death in his wake. And I feel like his relationship with Poppaea was so violent. He killed her son. Ended up killing her, and then he felt so bad about it and like had to fake her maid and all that stuff, which I think is crazy. That's it.
So one thing that I thought of when you first started telling the story about how violent and awful it was during this time period, and I'm thinking on like what life is like today, is I wonder
Hmm.
which is the natural state of humanity.
Hmm.
And then you said something else that I think solidified it for me. You mentioned how he probably beat that kid who he had castrated, but then would
Hmm.
cry afterwards. He probably killed Pompeii and would cry afterwards. And it just reminded me of like every abusive relationship that I see a story happening of
Absolutely.
on
Yeah.
ID in Investigation Discovery of like this kind of a dynamic. And I was like, well, I mean, that still holds true today as it did back then. So maybe that is the natural state of people, is just being just crazy, and we just put rules in place to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of a wild story.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It definitely was like, Yeah, you're right. Because I'm like, you want to say like we're less violent than, ancient times, but maybe it's just more hidden. There's still like,
You
I
said
think there's
six
like,
thousand people died in Qatar. I didn't know that.
I think there's like 40 million people in slavery in the world right now.
It's
Um,
crazy.
so there's like a lot going on. We just like we choose to not have it as part of our like daily life, I feel like. So
Yeah.
things have always been kind of awful, at least for the most part. In America, you can't murder your wife and get away with it, and your mom and your stepkid and your stepbrother. But maybe people have. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your takeaway? What's your red flag takeaway?
I think that like there's definitely like a takeaway of like, if everyone around you dies suspiciously, I'm suspicious of you, is a big one. And also that like quest for power and control of the empire being more important than family and relationships and people, I think is wild that you would just be like, I will kill anyone and I will, betray and poison and stab and do all these things just because I have to be in control. Um, I think that's crazy.
Hmm. I'm
What do
going
you
to
think?
extrapolate
Please
one
do.
layer beyond that to I think that okay, so everybody who got involved in this story obviously knew this guy was the emperor, and obviously look, there had to be some inkling that he was a nut job who was killing people constantly and doing crazy shit. Um, and they still went for it. And so there's something around if you are drawn to personalities of power or to
Hmm.
institutions of power, it can have an effect on you where you subjugate your own logic of like this could end badly for me because look at all the other facts in the story.
Hmm.
You might abandon that in the interest of being closer to that power or to that
Yeah,
personality.
totally.
um and so I guess check yourself if you start being drawn to that, like why am I drawn to that and what are my boundaries that I'm not going to overstep.
Totally. I think that's good for the turbans too. Like if someone is controlling you and you're doing things that are objectively bad, um, yeah, when do you check yourself? Because it should have been earlier
It
or
should have been
ever.
earlier. It should have been, yeah, exactly. And if you have a cell phone and you're trapped inside, please use it to call somebody. Um, so yeah,
Poor kids.
I know. I know. I
Poor
keep going back to
everyone.
that too. Poor everyone.
Yeah.
Well, that was our stories for this week on Doomed to Fail. Plenty
Yes.
of red flags. And
Hmm.
thank you, Taylor, for your story. And we'll do this again next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Fars. I feel like I'm getting my stride and trying. I don't know what exactly my shtick is, but I'm working on it. But I like these stories. They're fun, and I'm like they involve relationships and just like crazy, crazy shit that happened in the past, which I think is really fun because it's like people are always the same, and times are different, and it's interesting, which is why I like started becoming a history nerd in my old age. So
Which is why I became a true crime nerd in my old age. And the through line between the historic and the modern is kind of remarkable.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
we'll keep pursuing it.
Cool. Well, I will see you next week. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed episode 2, part 2 on Emperor Nero. If you have any questions or any ideas or feedback, we'd love to hear it. We are at doomedtofailpod@gmail.com. Find us at all your social media at Doomed to Fail, and our episodes are up anywhere you listen to podcasts. And